Looking at the big picture sometimes can be very daunting. It almost seems that the task at hand is just impossible. But what science, I guess, if you want to say science, what that teaches us is to break this big picture, this big problem into several smaller bite-sized pieces and then study each of those sections in great detail and work in that sort of matter. Even when you write an essay, there's an introduction, there's a body, and then there's a conclusion, and then you can kind of further break down the body into several different topics, and then those 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 word essays all of a sudden become not so scary because you're writing 200 words on this topic, 200 words on this topic, and that's kind of your body already taken care of, and then you just basically write an introduction leading up to this idea, and then a conclusion summarizing the main points, and that's kind of how you write essays. And so I remember first time when I saw, man, you want me to write 3,000 words, man? I can't write 3,000 words. It's impossible. But then you start kind of breaking things down and you're like, oh, okay, so it's not really that difficult. All I got to really write is 200 words on each thing. Easy peasy. In the same kind of frame of mind, we can look at powerlifting or body movements in the same kind of fashion. So with this deadlift, let's just focus on the deadlift, or even for the squat, for that matter, any freaking compound movement, for that matter. But let's focus on the deadlift. The first part of the deadlift, and the proportions of your body are gonna greatly impact some of these chats. But at least for me, the first portion, maybe like the first, 5 centimeters off the floor, when the plates kind of first break off, I rely on the quads to kind of put momentum into the bar, to break that inertia and to get the bar moving. Once you break inertia, it is a lot easier moving that mass through space. It basically requires less energy. Breaking inertia, that from physics, that coefficient of friction, and there's other ones as well, I forget now. But these forces which kind of demand breaking of inertia is very, very difficult. And so what makes a deadlift off the floor easier than a rack pull is that very thing, that you can involve the quads. Now, when you start the deadlift in a rack position, you basically, depending on the height, but you basically remove that leg drive component, because essentially you're starting the lift in the rack pull with a vertical shin. And so vertical shins put your body in a certain position, which basically relies purely on the posterior chain. You can't force, pressure, you can't put force through your quads to move that bar. And so I think one of the difficulties with a full range of motion deadlift is sometimes that transition between the quads and the posterior chain. Now, we're talking in relativities here. It's not like it's all quads in the first 5 centimeters and then it's all posterior chain. There's a combination, but there's like swinging kind of responsibility in that continuum between the different muscles. This is where kind of timing and positioning and technique comes into play when you do what. What do you activate to prevent what force doing what? In the squat, I don't know whether you guys feel the same way, but there are certain points in the squat that require certain things. So when you go below parallel, a lot of people tell me, oh, there's no point doing that because you're taking the pressure off muscle. You're taking the tension of the muscle, then you bounce at the bottom. Now, I don't know how you guys squat, but it's not a free fall from parallel to the ATG position. If you do that, then it becomes very, very difficult for you to catch your body in space and produce power through that sense. It is a controlled descent to parallel, but then from parallel to the bottom, yes, there is a stretch reflex, just like there's a stretch reflex in any reversing motion of the squat. I feel like it's a different set of musculature involved when you're going beyond parallel. So what happens there is then you start to really incorporate the adductors. These guys have, in that position, below parallel ATG position, they have more mechanical advantages to produce hip extension than glutes. It's just the way it is, where you are positioned in an ATG position. So these adductors are on the map. Whereas these adductors are not so on the map when your hip is 90 degrees and up. See what I mean? So when you fully flex your hip in an ATG position, you've sent your hip your hip angle is way less than 90 degrees, right? It's a lot of adductors for that hip extension. So when people say, oh, you're cheating or you're doing this, doing that, it's not cheating, man. It's just a different set of muscles that you're potentially missing out on. You don't be fooled to think that from parallel to the ATG position is just a free fall and then a bounce. We're not freaking basketballs, man. We're not springs. It doesn't work like that. It doesn't work like that. Yes, of course, when you go to parallel, maybe there's a less of a stretch reflex, but you are not incorporating adductors to the greater extent. So we're talking about you like apples or pears or whatever you want. For me, I've always said to you guys that the thing that got me into the freaking whole thing is seeing clock of ATG front squat 250 with a pause. My eyeballs dropped to the floor. I was like, this is incredible. Not only the dude is strong and looks freaking amazing, his physique is incredible, but he's also flexible, mobile. He's comfortable in those end range positions. That to me turned me on to the sport of powerlifting, weightlifting, barbell training. But when I saw the boys from Westside Barbell, like I don't even know if that is a 90-degree squat, man. It depends what camera angle you use. I don't even know what's going on. And somebody might get turned on by that, but I'm telling you my story. It does not get me turned on. I don't care if there's 55 plates on each side. It just doesn't fancy me. That's what I'm saying when it comes to that. But I think the difficulty with even a parallel squat or a partial deadlift or whatever it is that there's almost like a handing over the baton as you're going through the range of motion. Certain muscles decrease and increase as you go through the range of motion in force. I'm extremely sore from the rack pulls. That 240 deadlift was way heavier on my posterior chain. The 240 rack pull rather is way more heavy on the posterior chain than a 240 off the floor. Way more difficult. Because in the rack pull, I'm solely relying on the posterior chain plus the core strength to break that inertia. That is very, very difficult. This is why deadlifts are so freaking taxing, because you have to break the inertia. With the squat, the inertia is basically when you walk that thing out, it's stationary. But then there's an eccentric. And as you're going through the eccentric, there's like potential energy you're gaining potential energy. You're kind of like compressing the spring in a sense. And then you get to the bottom and there's energy there. There's momentum. The thing is moving. You just keep pushing. With the deadlift, you got to produce that thing from scratch. And that is difficult. That is really, really difficult. And so that's what I think is the key when we're talking about these rack pulls. It's just a different strength curve. It's a different challenge. And in a way, I feel like it's technically easier because there's no transition between the front and the back. It's just all back. It's all back. And I'm feeling it, man. The traps, the lats, like a lot of you guys keep telling me, why don't you do pull-ups? Man, there is no point doing pull-ups, man. Like me depressing my shoulder girdle, trying to get tight for that rack pull, for that deadlift, gives me such DOMs in the lats. Now, it's not the entire lats, like it's not the whole freaking wing, but it's kind of like right in the armpit and maybe like, it's a lot of the lat. I'm trying to, it's not, I don't know how to explain it other than, you guys looking at me and me pointing it out. But a large portion of the lat is sore. On top of that, the middle traps, the upper traps, very, very sore. And then the erectors, the railroad, man, the rails on either side of that spine, basically from the coccyx all the way up. It's uncomfortable, and I've been using that gun, the massage gun on my back. I've been using the lacrosse ball. I've been massaging myself. My glutes are a little bit sore. Hamstrings also a little bit sore. I was actually surprised that the hamstrings were not the most sore. It's just the back. The back is fried right now. Absolutely fried. But it feels good. For you guys that are listening to this and you love training like me, these DOMs, depends on what muscle it is. Like when I have sore hamstrings, man, like it's just a miserable life. For some reason, I don't know why. It just wears me out. But when I have sore traps and erectors, I feel like I've done a really, really good thing. I don't know why that is. It's purely probably my opinion. But when I have a sore back like this, I feel like that was time well spent. There's something about having a strong damn back, man. It's just something about it. It goes back to my experience as a young lifter when I nearly snapped my spine doing a freaking tricep extension on a preacher curl, just sitting in the damn thing. And as I was putting it down, I heard a pop in my lower back, didn't feel my legs for like 5 minutes, panicked like a maniac. Anyway, that's a story, I've said many times before, but I ended up doing a whole bunch of sit-ups in that position. I didn't move for like 10, 20 minutes, did a whole bunch of sit-ups, went home, woke up the next day feeling mint. I don't know what that pop was, but I remember the paresthesia. I remember that numbness through the legs. I remember the panic. Ever since that day, my whole philosophy in training changed. I was so upset with myself. I hated myself for doing the pec deck, the chest flies, the bicep curls, the tricep extensions, the cable work. All that crap is junk, I said to myself. You need to make sure your damn spine is 100%. Not only because of training, but it's also nursing. It's like the number one freaking injury in nursing, it's your lower back. So from then on, I was like, I had a high affinity to weightlifting, to powerlifting, to functional, like strong people, man. Like when you see Klokov do that, I'm going to butcher that. I'm not really good with weightlifting terminology, but it's a snatch position. I think it's a hang power snatch. So he would like start so he's standing in a snatch position with stupid amount of weight in, like I think it was like 180, 200, 220, something crazy amount of weight. And so he would lower the thing down to his knees, and from that, hold it there, and from there, from dead stop, he would snatch it above his head. Now, that is insanity to me, but that is also very, very appealing to me. That man has a strong freaking back. And this is why every time I get DOMs in my erectors, in my traps, in my lats, I feel good. Like I feel like I'm insulating that dream of mine back in the day when I snapped my spine. Or I thought I snapped my spine. So it always feels good. And these RDLs are so simple in the sense there is no transition, there is no handing over a baton between the quads, and it's all back. It's just hip extension. Not only that, but it's kind of like before you break that bar off the pins, you almost like you're getting tight, like Mike Tyson's gonna give you a body shot. It's like full tightness, like tight, and then you slowly start seeing the bar break, and then there's acceleration. But just breaking of that thing is all core strength, it's all core tightness. And I think, just like Julian said in the Patreon, which initiated the whole thing, it's that tightness that carries over. He's spot on with that. We had continued on with our chats. And he basically said, it's that tightness. You can do your hollow body and your sit-ups, and you can do side planks and peel off them presses and whatever you want to do. Really, what we're trying to get better at is creating tightness through that intra-abdominal cavity. You want tightness there because that's going to insulate those islands, those pillows, those vertebral discs, right? Because if those discs pop, if there's any sort of integrity questioning in that lower back, your central nervous system just deregulates the power it's going to output in protection of your system. That's how it works, man. This is why core strength is so important, because it allows you to send more electricity from your brain to the muscles. So, one of you guys asked me, I forget the fella's name now, but he's an MMA fighter, and he's like, Ivan, you don't look like, no offense, he goes, you don't look like you're strong, but you're strong. You look way stronger than you look. And he's like, I'm on the other side of that. I look way, way stronger than I actually am. How do you get to where you are? What I try to explain to him through messages, and it's kind of hard, but I try to, send him down the right path. All I basically said is nerves. Train the nerves. Basically, when I see a big dude walking around with big ass muscles, I'm thinking that dude's got a lot of potential. He's got a lot of potential. But he needs a tune-up. We need to put a damn chip in him, man. We need to put a daughter board on top of his, a stock CPU, ECU, so we can tell that thing how to really send the petrol and the oxygen in, right? That's what we're trying to do. So these nerves are that. It's a tune-up. Sending the electricity through. Sometimes there's these negative feedback mechanisms in the body where there's structural integrity issues, and so the body gets deregulated, right? So these strong guys who look like they don't have any muscle, they have just maxed that nerve strength. those roads from the brain all the way down to each of these motor neurons are just highways, man. Highways, man. Where some of you big guys that don't have a lot of strength, it's like you're sending that damn car from your brain to the motor neuron through side streets. It's kind of like the guys work it out back and forth. Basically, you don't have the technique, you don't have the practice. And a lot of that stuff is core strength. You need to make sure you insulate the hell out of your spine. Your whole spinal cord is safe. So that's your highway, right? So the CNS doesn't deregulate the highway. And then if you can also add highways from the spinal cord all the way to the quads, to the glutes, to the hamstrings, to all of that stuff, then you're cooking with gas, right? So it's a fundamental change in people's training. It's not bodybuilding. We are training movements. So the difference between bodybuilding and powerlifting, in my mind, bodybuilders train muscle, powerlifters train movements. Movements. Yes, of course, we can train muscles as well, bring things up, but it's movements that we're trying to get better at. Squat, bench, deadlift. That's the sport. In bodybuilding, no one gives a shit what your numbers are. It's how you look. It's a completely fundamental difference. Yes, both athletes spend time in the gym, but they are doing completely different arts. One is a freaking abstract. The other one is a I don't know what sort of artist, but it's completely different. One's a rapper. The other one is a pianist. Another one is a violin player. And then one guy over here is rapping murder rap. Yeah, it's music, yeah, oh, that's cool, man. But they don't like each other, man. Basically, I'm not gonna go listen to opera. I'm listening to Tupac. and the lady that's listening to opera, man, she's not gonna be like, man, I'll listen to Tupac. This is rubbish. This is disgusting. Even though it's music, it's completely different. And so that's kind of what I think about when I think about all of these things. It's kind of like, carryover is a big thing. That's a really big term in my mind. Everything that I do, I want to do it for carryover. I'm not doing it to look good. I don't give a shit, man. And a lot of the side effects of doing these movements is you end up looking good anyway. But the main goal is I'm doing this with the damn purpose to improve that. Squat, bench, deadlift. That's what I want, man. In fact, I just want squats, right? But I've worked out the squats and deadlifts are like cousins, man. They're both related, man. You pump the other one's going to increase. And that's so forth, so on. So that's how it is. Rack pulls, great posterior chain exercise, but my God, is it an excellent core strength exercise. To let you guys know what I'm feeling right now, my lower ribs hurt. So remember yesterday I said to you guys that last time I did rack pulls, I had intercostal chest pain. I had pain, I could palpate spots in my damn chest. The amount of force, the amount of clenching you have to do to break that damn bar off the pins is extraordinary. Right now, I'm doing it as I speak to you guys, palpating over the last rib, kind of towards the sternum, all of that stuff, I'm sore. I'm damn sore. What is that? How do you target that thing in sit-ups? I have no idea, man. But when you put weight on your back and you put weight in your hands and you strain against that sucker, don't worry about what muscles are firing. You don't need to freaking be an anatomy major. Movements. And I think it's very beneficial when we break these big pictures down into bite-sized pieces. Okay, a deadlift is a push, a squat. Let's just say I call it a squat, the first 5 centimeters. And then it's a hip extension or a rack pull after that. Let's go from there. I guarantee you, man, if you improve your rack pull, your deadlift is going to go up. When you get into the rack pull range of motion. What about that first bit? How do we work out that first bit? And sometimes it's not as obvious. It's not just the quads in the first bit. This is the craziest thing of all. I thought it was the quads, and I ended up doing leg extensions, and I ended up doing Bulgarian split squats. I did all of these things, and I didn't really feel like anything carried over. But when I started working my upper back through front squats, all of a sudden my deadlift starts to move. So upper back tension is required. Core tension is required. Because if you think about it, when you are especially like me with short ass arms, T-Rex arms, when I'm bent over in that position, I'm basically horizontal freaking spinal angle. I'm basically fully flexed over, man. Like I am in a crunch. I'm in a sit-up position. So if I have weak anterior core, I'm going to weak off the floor because I'm just so bent over. There's so much requirement for my core to stabilize for me to break off the floor. And you can think, oh, my quads are weak. Maybe your core is weak. Your core is weak. That's why you are weak off the floor, because that's the most bunched over position. And as you go up, you're better and better because there's less and less demand on the core. Oh man. Go crazy thinking about all this stuff, but that's how I think about it. I think rack pulls are excellent. It's not just the obvious, the posterior chains, it's also the core. And that core strengthening that we're doing in the rack pull will also carry out to the floor, because the floor also requires core strength. Anyway, talking in circles. Thank you everyone on the Patreon list. Thank you everyone on YouTube. I love replying. You guys know I love the community. One of you guys last week messaged me, and you were offering your support to me. We went back and forth. The fella insisted to help me in some way. I kept saying to him, don't worry about this, don't do it. Your viewership and your comments are much appreciated. But he really wanted to help me out on my journey. And so he got me a microphone, a professional freaking microphone. I think it's called the Blue Yeti microphone. I have never had any piece of equipment like that in my life. I've played around with it today. I don't really know what I'm doing. The sound kind of sounds weird. I have to kind of go back and read about it and work out what the settings are. But the fella's name is, hopefully I don't butcher his name, Hyun Woo. Hyun Woo, man, I appreciate you. You said to me, you don't have to shout me out on the video. You don't have to do anything. This is just me to you. My friend, I thank you for this. I'm not going to forget your generosity. It's a beautiful thing for me to receive this from you. I'm never going to forget you, man. It's very much appreciated, man. And I can't believe it, man. I can't believe it that you wanted to do this for me. Really makes me feel incredible to make these videos, and it kind of gives me a palpable feeling of what these videos are doing. When I make these videos, guys, like I've said this in the past, I am not imagining anyone in front of me, because if you put me in front of 100,000 people, all of my subscribers, in a stadium, big ass stadium, I would not be speaking like this, because I am not used to speaking to crowds. I am in my garage, and I just don't picture anyone. I just picture my brain. I'm just talking out loud, essentially. And now this microphone is sitting here, and I'm like, hold on a minute, man. What's going on here, man? It's almost like, so there's a microphone here, so that means people are listening. It's almost like I have to get used to this microphone. It's almost intimidating me. The microphone is like the ultimate thing that, when you have a microphone, people are listening, right? Anyway, it's a process in my mind, but usually I talk and sometimes close my eyes and I just let my brain rip. But this microphone is making me kind of feel, it's a palpable feeling that people are listening. And that's a special feeling. That's a special feeling. I appreciate you guys. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace out.